Before you decide you already understand this topic, stay with me, because what I am about to reveal is not what most men are prepared to hear, and it is definitely not what most women openly admit. There is a reason some older men are respected, desired, and quietly feared to lose, while others are tolerated, replaced, or forgotten. It has nothing to do with money alone. It has nothing to do with looks. And it certainly has nothing to do with trying to act younger than your age. It has everything to do with psychological position. In the next few minutes, you are going to see attraction differently. You are going to understand why some men trigger deep attachment without begging for it. Why some men never need to threaten to leave, yet their absence is felt immediately. Why some men compete loudly for attention, while others command it without raising their voice. This is not about manipulation. It is not about tactics. It is about identity. If you have ever wondered why a woman's behavior changes around certain men, if you have ever felt that you are giving too much and receiving too little, if you have ever sensed that there is an invisible dynamic you cannot quite decode, this conversation will expose it. But it will also challenge you, because the truth is uncomfortable. The type of older man younger women fear losing is not created through tricks. He is built through discipline, boundaries, emotional control, and internal stability. And by the end of this video, you will either recognize that man in yourself, or you will understand exactly what you need to change to become him. Stay until the end, because the final insight will shift how you see power, attraction, and respect forever. Let's begin with something most men misunderstand. You think attraction is built on excitement. You think it's built on dominance, intensity, charisma, or the ability to overwhelm a woman with presence. But the type of older man younger women quietly fear losing is not the most exciting man in the room. It is the most emotionally disciplined one. And those are not the same thing. Emotional discipline is rare because it requires self-awareness. It requires a man to confront his insecurities instead of disguising them as confidence. It requires him to regulate his impulses rather than justify them. Most men, regardless of age, are reactive. They react when they feel ignored. They react when they feel challenged. They react when their ego is touched. Their mood shifts with her tone. Their confidence rises and falls with her attention. But the man who has done internal work does not move like that. When she takes longer to reply, he does not spiral into anxiety. When she disagrees with him, he does not interpret it as disrespect. When she tests his boundaries, he does not explode. In order to reassert control, he remains measured, observant, calm. That calmness is not weakness. It is control. Psychologically, what makes emotional discipline so powerful is that it signals nervous system stability. And human beings, especially in intimate relationships, are constantly scanning for safety. A younger woman may consciously say she wants excitement, unpredictability, passion, but her nervous system craves steadiness. It craves a man who does not become volatile under pressure. Volatility creates chemistry in the short term. Stability creates attachment in the long term. The emotionally reactive man is easy to read. You can predict him, compliment him, and he softens immediately. Withdraw from him, and he chases harder. Challenge him, and he raises his voice. His behavior is governed by external stimuli. In other words, he is controlled by his environment, but the emotionally disciplined man is internally governed. His responses are chosen, not triggered. That difference changes the entire power dynamic. When a woman realizes she cannot manipulate a reaction out of you, something shifts. not because she wants to control you maliciously, but because unconscious testing is part of human bonding. She needs to know how solid you are. She needs to know if your confidence collapses under pressure. She needs to know if your leadership is situational or structural. If your calm disappears the moment you feel insecure, then your strength was never strength. It was performance. An older man who has mastered emotional regulation does not perform strength. He embodies it. He has already experienced rejection. He has already experienced loss. He has already faced failure. He knows what it feels like to not be chosen. And because he has survived that, he no longer fears it. And when you no longer fear loss, you stop behaving desperately. Disparaging is loud, it over-explains, it over-promises, it rushes intimacy, it tries to secure reassurance constantly. Emotional discipline, on the other hand, is quiet. It listens more than it speaks. It observes patterns before making decisions, and it does not chase clarity. It allows clarity to reveal itself. This is why a younger woman feels unsettled in a powerful way around this type of man. She senses that he is not easily shaken. She senses that her beauty does not destabilize him. She senses that her withdrawal does not panic him. And that makes him psychologically scarce. Scarcity is not about money or status. It is about emotional self-sufficiency. The man who reacts emotionally is common. The man who regulates himself is rare. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Emotional discipline is more attractive than emotional intensity. Intensity can be fabricated. Discipline cannot. Discipline is built through repetition, through restraint, through conscious decision-making over years. When conflict arises, the reactive man argues to win. The disciplined man seeks to understand first. When disrespected, the reactive man retaliates immediately. The disciplined man evaluates whether correction is necessary or whether disengagement is wiser. He does not allow ego to dictate his strategy. That is, maturity feels different. It feels grounded. It feels anchored. It feels like being with someone whose emotional state is not fragile. Younger women often grow up navigating emotional unpredictability, whether from peers or partners. When they encounter an older man who does not oscillate between extremes, who does not love intensely one day and withdraw the next, who does not use silence as punishment or affection as leverage, they experience something unfamiliar. Emotional consistency. Consistency builds trust, and trust builds attachment. But understand this clearly. Emotional discipline does not mean emotional suppression. It does not mean being cold or detached. It means feeling fully but responding intentionally. It means you can acknowledge jealousy without acting possessive. You can acknowledge attraction without becoming obsessive. You can acknowledge disappointment without becoming punitive. You remain in control of your expression, and control over self is the highest form of power. The younger woman who recognizes this understands that such a man cannot be easily replaced because emotional regulation at that level is the product of years of introspection and correction. It is not something you learn from a motivational quote. It is something you cultivate through pain and accountability. When she senses that you are not governed by impulse, she begins to respect you differently. Respect deepens attraction. Attraction built on respect is far more stable than attraction built on excitement. So if you are an older man listening to this, stop trying to appear impressive. Start trying to become regulated. Stop trying to dominate conversations. Start mastering your reactions. Stop proving your worth through external validation. Prove it through composure, because the man who cannot control his emotions cannot lead himself, let alone a relationships. And the one who can remain steady when everything around him shifts becomes unforgettable. Master your reactions, and you master the dynamic. Lose control of yourself, and you lose everything that made you powerful in the first place. Now let us go deeper, because emotional discipline alone is not the full picture. There is another layer that makes this type of older man psychologically rare. He wants her, but he does not depend on her. And that distinction changes everything. Most men confuse desire with attachment. They meet a woman they are attracted to, and almost immediately their emotional center of gravity shifts toward her. Their schedule begins to revolve around her availability. Their mood becomes influenced by her responsiveness. Their confidence rises when she praises them and drops when she withholds validation. They call this love. Often it is dependency. Dependency feels romantic in the beginning. It feels intense. It feels passionate. But psychologically, dependency creates imbalance. The person who needs more automatically has less power. The older man who has done the internal work does not operate from need. He operates from choice. He desires her. He enjoys her presence. He appreciates her youth, her energy, her perspective, but his life is not empty without her. His purpose existed before she arrived, and it will continue if she leaves. His routines are intact. His standards are intact. His direction is intact. That self-sufficiency is deeply unsettling to someone who is used to being the emotional axis of a relationship. Understand this clearly. When a woman senses that you need her to feel complete, she unconsciously feels pressure. She becomes responsible for your happiness, and no one wants to carry that weight long term. It feels suffocating. It feels fragile. It feels like one wrong move will shatter you. But when she senses that you are whole on your own, something different happens. She relaxes, she respects you more, she invests differently, because now she is not managing your emotions. She is responding to your stability. The man who depends on her will tolerate behaviors he should not tolerate. He will ignore red flags because he fears losing access. He will overextend himself financially, emotionally, physically, trying to secure her commitment. His fear of loss drives his decisions. The man who does not depend on her evaluates, he observes consistency. He measures character. He does not rush exclusivity simply because he feels chemistry. He understands that attraction without alignment leads to instability. Scarcity is powerful because it communicates standards. If you are willing to walk away from something that does not meet your criteria, you are saying without words that your self-respect outweighs your desire. And that is magnetic. Younger women often test for this unconsciously, not because they are manipulative, but because they are trying to determine your depth. They may withdraw slightly to see if you chase anxiously. They may challenge a bounder to see if you bend immediately. They may express uncertainty to see if you collapse into reassurance mode. If you respond with panic, you confirm dependence. If you respond with calm clarity, you confirm strength. When a man is dependent, he negotiates his values. When he is self-sufficient, he enforces them. This does not mean being cold or emotionally unavailable. It means understanding that love is a complement to your life, not the foundation of your identity. It means you do not abandon your friendships, your discipline, your ambitions, or your routines to accommodate romantic intensity. A woman who recognizes that you will not sacrifice your entire structure for her attention begins to see you differently. She understands that your time is valuable. Your energy is limited. Your presence is earned, not demanded. Dependency says, I need you to stay so I can feel secure. Self-sufficiency says, I choose you because you add value to my already stable life. Those are completely different messages. Psychologically, human beings are drawn to what feels chosen, not what feels clung to. Being needed can feel flattering initially, but being chosen feels powerful when she knows you have options, but you are intentionally investing in her because she aligns with your standards. She feels elevated. Choice elevates, need suffocates. And here is the philosophical layer B. Beneath this dynamic, dependency is rooted in fear. Self-sufficiency is rooted in abundance. If you believe you cannot find another woman of quality, you will tolerate what you should not tolerate. If you believe your life will collapse without this specific person, you will compromise your dignity. But if you understand that your value is not tied to one individual's validation, you operate differently. You move slower. You observe longer. You invest intentionally. The older man who does not depend on her is attractive because he embodies internal abundance. He is not rushing to secure commitment out of anxiety. He is not competing with younger men out of insecurity. He is not overcompensating to prove worth. He knows who he is. And when a woman senses that your identity is not negotiable, she becomes more careful with how she treats you because she understands that your departure is a real possibility. That is what creates fear of loss, not aggression, not possessiveness, not control. The possibility that you can walk away peacefully. Peaceful detachment is more powerful than emotional chaos. If she believes that disrespect or inconsistency will simply result in your calm withdrawal, she recalibrates her behavior, not because she is intimidated, but because she values access. Access to stability, access to leadership, access to emotional maturity. The man who does not depend on her does not threaten to leave. He simply maintains standards. He does not announce ultimatums dramatically. He communicates expectations clearly and observes whether they are met. And if they are not, he adjusts accordingly. That quiet confidence is rare. In a culture where many relationships are built on mutual insecure, the man who is internally secure becomes exceptional. He is not trying to fill a void. He is sharing a life that is already full. So the question you must ask yourself is not whether she desires you. The question is whether you desire her from a place of strength or from a place of fear. Because if you are operating from fear of loss, she will feel it, and fear erodes respect. But if you are operating from choice, from wholeness, from clarity, she will feel that too, and respect will grow. Build a life you do not need to escape from. Build a mindset that does not crumble under absence. Build a standard that does not bend under beauty. When you stop needing her to complete you, you give her the opportunity to truly choose you. And the man who is chosen without needing to beg becomes the one she fears losing the most. Now we need to confront something that most people are uncomfortable discussing because it forces accountability. Standards. It is easy to say you are emotionally disciplined. It is easy to say you do not depend on her. B. You to all of that collapses the moment your boundaries bend under pressure. And this is where most men fail, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack enforcement. The type of older man younger women fear losing is not simply calm. He is clear, and clarity without boundaries is meaningless. Let us be honest. Many men claim to have standards, but their standards dissolve the moment they encounter beauty. They say they value respect, but tolerate subtle disrespect because they fear appearing too rigid. They say they want consistency, but accept inconsistency as long as attraction remains high. They say they will not tolerate emotional games, yet they continue engaging in them. That inconsistency communicates weakness. When your words and actions do not align, you lose credibility. And credibility is the foundation of authority. A younger woman may consciously push back against firm boundaries at first. She may interpret them as strict or old-fashioned, but unconsciously she measures them. She evaluates whether they are stable or negotiable. Because boundaries tell her something critical about you, how you value yourself. If your boundaries shift depending on her mood, her appearance, or her attention, then your self-respect is conditional. And conditional self-respect cannot command long-term respect from anyone else. The older man who is feared losing does not negotiate core values. He communicates expectations calmly, without hostility. He does not shout. He does not threaten. He does not dramatize. He simply states what is acceptable and what is not, and then he observes. This is where emotional discipline and non-dependence intersect with standards. If you are emotionally reactive, you will enforce boundaries aggressively. If you are dependent, you will fail to enforce them entirely. But if you are disciplined and self-sufficient, you enforce them quietly and consistently, of what makes boundaries real. For example, if he values communication, he does not accept repeated silent treatments disguised as needing space. If he values respect, he does not tolerate sarcasm intended to belittle him in public. If he values exclusivity, he does not entertain ambiguous behavior with other men. He does not over-explain why these standards matter. He simply expects alignment. And if alignment does not occur, he adjusts his level of investment. That is power. Power is not controlling another person. Power is controlling your access. Power is deciding what behavior earns proximity and what behavior loses it. Younger women often encounter men who complain about disrespect but remain present regardless. They witness men who threaten to leave but never actually disengage. Over time, those empty threats create emotional insulation. Words lose weight. The man who is feared losing does not make speeches about leaving. He leaves when necessary, calmly, without spectacle. That quiet exit is more powerful than any argument. Psychologically, boundaries create structure. Structure creates safety. Even if she resists structure verbally, she benefits from it emotionally. Chaos may feel exciting, but it is exhausting long term. A man with firm, fair boundaries reduces chaos, and fairness is important here. Standards are not about domination. They are about mutual respect. If he expects punctuality, he practices it. If he expects honesty, he embodies it. If he expects emotional maturity, he models it. Hypocrisy destroys authority, integrity builds it. There is also a deeper philosophical layer. Boundaries are an expression of identity. When you tolerate behavior that contradicts your values, you fragment yourself. You begin to resent the other person, but the resentment is actually directed inward because you allowed the violation. Resentment erodes attraction. It erodes respect. It erodes leadership. The older man who maintains his boundaries protects not only the relationship dynamic, but his own internal coherence. He does not abandon himself to maintain connection, and that self-loyalty is magnetic. When a woman senses that you will not betray your own standards for her approval, she recognizes something rare. You are not governed by desire alone. You are governed by principle. Principle creates predictability. Predictability creates trust, and trust is far more seductive than intensity. Many younger men confuse flexibility with maturity. They believe being accommodating in every situation makes them evolved. But excessive accommodation signals fear of rejection. True maturity is knowing when to bend and when to stand firm. The man who is feared losing understands that boundaries are not ultimatums. They are filters. They filter out incompatibility. They filter out manipulation. They filter out instability. If a woman aligns with his standards, the relationship deepens naturally. If she does not, he does not attempt to remodel her personality. He simply acknowledges the mismatch. That detachment is not coldness, it is discernment. And discernment is rare in a culture that glorifies instant connection. Here is what truly unsettles her in a powerful way. She realizes that her beauty alone is not enough to secure his commitment. Her charm alone is not enough to override his standards. She must bring character, consistency, and respect. That requirement elevates her behavior, not because she is forced, but because she values access to a man who values himself. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you tolerate chaos, you will receive chaos. If you tolerate disrespect, you will receive disrespect. But if you tolerate only alignment, you will attract those capable of it. So the question becomes uncomfortable but necessary. Are your standards real or are they decorative? Do they function under pressure or do they collapse under attraction? Because the man who is truly feared losing does not bend under pressure. He bends only when it aligns with his principles. And when you become a man whose presence requires respect, whose access requires consistency, and whose commitment requires alignment, you shift the entire dynamic. Respect is not demanded, it is inspired by boundaries that do not move. If you want to be irreplaceable, stop negotiating your values for temporary validation. Define your standards clearly, live by them consistently, and let your actions speak louder than your desire. The moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else, you become the one they fear losing. There is a difference between excitement and safety. There is a difference between intensity and stability. And the older man younger women fear losing is not the one who gives her constant adrenaline. It is the one who regulates her nervous system. This is subtle, but it is powerful. In the beginning of most relationships, excitement feels intoxicating, fast replies, late night conversations, impulsive plans, emotional highs, and dramatic reconciliations. It feels cinematic, it feels alive, but intensity is not the same as security. Intensity spikes emotion, stability sustains connection. A younger woman may initially be drawn to energy and unpredictability because it feels stimulating, but stimulation is temporary. The human nervous system cannot live in a constant state of emotional elevation. It eventually seeks equilibrium. It seeks grounding. The older man who has faced life, who has endured loss, who has navigated failure and rebuilt himself, carries a different presence. His calm is not performative, it is earned. He does not panic during disagreement. He does not escalate when challenged. He does not withdraw affection as punishment. He remains steady. That steadiness creates something deeper than excitement. It creates psychological safety. Psychological safety means she does not have to walk on eggshells around you. It means she does not fear unpredictable emotional explosions. It means she does not feel she must constantly manage your reactions. She can express disagreement without fearing abandonment. She can communicate frustration without triggering chaos. This does not make you passive, it makes you stable. There is a profound difference. Many younger men mistake emotional volatility for passion. They believe jealousy proves love. They believe possessiveness proves desire. They believe dramatic reactions prove depth of feeling, but volatility often signals insecurity. not devotion. The older man who is feared losing understands that love without stability becomes exhausting. He understands that a relationship cannot thrive if both people are emotionally unregulated. Someone must anchor the dynamic, and anchoring requires self mastery. When conflict arises, he does not rush to win the argument. He seeks to understand the root. When tension builds, he does not match emotional intensity with greater intensity. He slows the pace. He lowers his tone. He chooses timing wisely. That response does something profound. It communicates leadership. Leadership in relationships is not about control. It is about containment. It is about creating an emotional environment where growth is possible. A younger woman who has experienced chaotic dynamics before will feel the contrast immediately. With unstable partners, she may have felt uncertainty constantly. One day she is adored, the next day she is ignored. One moment there is warmth, the next moment there is distance. That unpredictability creates anxiety. Anxiety can feel like chemistry, but it erodes trust over time. With the grounded older man, there is rhythm. There is predictability in behavior, not boredom, but reliability. His affection does not fluctuate wildly based on mood. His attention is not withdrawn to create power plays. His commitment is not threatened during minor disagreements. That consistency allows her nervous system to relax. And when a woman feels relaxed in your presence, attachment deepens. Here is the paradox. Stability may not create fireworks every day, but it builds something far more powerful. Long-term desire rooted in trust. When she feels safe, she invests more. When she invests more, intimacy strengthens. When intimacy strengthens, attraction evolves beyond surface level excitement. She begins to associate you with peace. Peace is underestimated in modern dating culture. Everyone talks about sparks and butterflies. Very few talk about calm and security. But the truth is, butterflies are often anxiety misinterpreted as romance. Calm is often maturity misinterpreted as boring. The older man who has done the work does not compete with youthful chaos. He does not attempt to mimic unpredictability to appear exciting. He understands that his value lies in emotional gravity. Gravity does not need to be loud, it simply holds everything in place. When she faces stress in her career, he remains composed. When external pressures increase, he does not add to them. He becomes a stabilizing force. Over time, she realizes that her life functions better with him in it. Realization is powerful because excitement can be found in many places. Stability cannot. Anyone can create a rush. Few can create peace. The man who offers peace without losing strength becomes irreplaceable, not because he is flashy, but because he is grounding, not because he overwhelms her senses, but because he regulates the emotional climate of the relationship. This does not mean eliminating playfulness or spontaneity. It means those qualities are layered on top of a stable foundation. A house built on unstable ground will collapse under pressure. A house built on solid ground can withstand storms. Life inevitably brings storms, financial stress, family challenges, personal setbacks, health concerns. During those moments, excitement is irrelevant. Stability becomes everything. A younger woman may not consciously articulate this in the beginning, but over time, she feels the difference between temporary thrill and long-term security. She recognizes that the calm man is not lacking emotion. He simply expresses it. Responsible emotion builds respect. And respect sustains attraction long after novelty fades. So if you are an older man listening to this, stop trying to compete with chaos. Stop measuring your value by how intense you can make her feel. Measure it by how stable you remain under pressure. Ask yourself difficult questions. Do you escalate quickly? Do you withdraw affection when hurt? Do you react impulsively to perceived threats? Or do you pause, reflect, and respond with intention? Because the man who can remain centered while everything around him fluctuates becomes the emotional anchor in the relationship. And the anchor is rarely abandoned. Excitement can be replaced, adrenaline can be recreated. But peace, once experienced deeply, is difficult to surrender. If you want to become the man she fears losing, cultivate emotional steadiness so profound that your presence feels like relief. Be the calm in the storm, not the storm itself. Because in the end, people do not hold on to what excites them temporarily. They hold on to what makes them feel safe permanently. Now we arrive at the final layer, and this is where everything connects. The older man younger women fear losing is irreplaceable because he is built, not born. Let that settle. He was not handed his composure. He was not gifted emotional intelligence at birth. He did not wake up one day with discipline, boundaries, self-sufficiency, and stability fully formed. He became that man through experience, through loss, through failure, through self-correction, and that process makes him rare. Anyone can imitate confidence temporarily. Anyone can rehearse attractive behaviors. Anyone can learn the right phrases to say. But imitation collapses under pressure. Construction does not. A man who is built through adversity carries depth in a way that cannot be faked. He has experienced rejection and survived it. He has invested in the wrong person and learned from it. He has misjudged character and paid the price. He has faced moments where his ego was shattered and rebuilt himself with more awareness. That rebuilding process creates internal architecture. When you have lost and rebuilt, you no longer cling out of fear. When you have been disappointed and healed, you no longer rush attachment blindly. When you have made mistakes and corrected them, you move with discernment rather than impulse. This depth is felt. Younger women may not consciously analyze it, but they sense the difference between a man who is performing maturity and a man who has earned it. The earned version feels grounded. It feels layered. It feels like being with someone who understands consequence. The built man does not romanticize potential blindly because he understands reality. He does not chase fantasy because he has seen what happens when fantasy collapses. He does not confuse chemistry with compatibility because he has learned that lesson before experience refines instinct. And refinement is rare in a culture obsessed with immediacy. Most people avoid discomfort. They avoid introspection. They avoid accountability. They repeat patterns because self-examination is painful. But the older man who becomes irreplaceable did not avoid those things. He faced them. He examined his own toxic behaviors. He confronted his insecurities. He admitted where he was wrong in previous relationships. He stopped blaming external circumstances for internal weaknesses. That level of accountability builds character. Character is what sustains attraction when novelty fades. Beauty changes. Circumstances shift. External factors fluctuate, but character remains. When a younger woman recognizes that you are a man of character, not just charm, she calculates differently. She understands that replacing charm is easy. Replacing character is not. Character is forged slowly. It requires years of consistent decision-making. It requires restraint when temptation appears. It requires choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure. The built man has learned to delay gratification. He has learned to sacrifice temporary excitement for sustainable outcomes. That discipline extends beyond relationships. It shows in his career, his health, his friendships, his financial decisions. Everything in his life reflects intentional construction. That intentionality is magnetic because it signals direction. A man who knows where he is going emotionally, professionally, and personally becomes a stabilizing force in someone else's life. He is not drifting. He is not improvising identity. He is not seeking validation to define himself. He defines himself through action. And here is the critical truth. When a woman encounters a man who has built himself deliberately, she understands that access to him is not accidental. He did not stumble into maturity. He earned it. That means losing him is not simply losing a partner. It is losing access to a level of depth that is uncommon. Scarcity increases value. Built men are scarce because construction requires discomfort. Many avoid discomfort. They avoid therapy. They avoid reflection. They avoid discipline. They chase distraction instead of growth. The man who chooses growth repeatedly becomes different. He becomes measured in speech because he has learned the cost of reckless words. He becomes patient in conflict because he has seen what escalation destroys. He becomes selective in commitment because he has experienced the damage of misalignment. That history becomes wisdom. It does not advertise itself, but it shapes every decision. And over time, she recognizes that his guidance, his calm, his structure, and his standards are not arbitrary. They are informed by experience. That realization deepens respect. Respect built on wisdom creates loyalty. This is why he is difficult to replace, not because there are no other old men, not because there are no other confident men, but because there are few who have consciously built themselves instead of simply aging. Age alone does not create value. Construction does. A man can grow older and remain immature. He can accumulate years without accumulating insight. The man she fears losing is the one who used his years wisely. He turned pain into perspective. He turned mistakes into strategy. He turned heartbreak into discipline. That alchemy transforms him. And transformation cannot be copied overnight. So the real question is not whether younger women fear losing this type of man. The real question is whether you are willing to become him, but are you willing to examine your flaws honestly? Are you willing to endure the discomfort of self-improvement? Are you willing to sacrifice ego for growth? Because being built requires demolition first. You must dismantle false beliefs. You must strip away insecurity disguised as pride and pride. You must confront the patterns that sabotaged you. That process is not glamorous. It is private, it is quiet, it is often lonely. But on the other side of that work is something powerful. You become a man who is not chasing validation. You become a man who does not fear abandonment. You become a man whose presence carries weight, and weight commands value. When you build yourself intentionally, you no longer worry about being replaced. You understand that depth is rare and rarity protects itself. So instead of asking how to make her fear losing you, ask a better question. How do you build yourself so completely that losing you becomes a genuine loss? Because the man who is constructed through discipline, accountability, stability, and wisdom does not need to create fear. His absence speaks for itself. Build yourself so thoroughly that your presence feels like a privilege. And once you do, you will never again have to compete for attention. You will simply be irreplaceable.